chains of fire. They called us primitive, we became their executioners. They came without warning. One moment, the night skies above Earth were quiet, filled with the ordinary lights of distant stars. The next, the heavens tore open with fire. Vast alien warships, kilometers long, forged from obsidian steel and pulsing with sickly green energy, descended into orbit. They blotted out the sun, casting shadows over the oceans, mountains, and cities below. We had always wondered if we were alone. That night, we got our answer. And the answer was war. The Zerath Dominion, that was a name we would later come to know them by, did not arrive in peace, nor did they offer diplomacy. They did not extend a hand, only a chain. To them, humanity was a curiosity, a young and primitive species that had dared to stretch its hand toward the stars. And in their eyes, such insolence could not be tolerated. Their first strike was swift and merciless. Beams of plasma hotter than the sun's surface rained down on Earth's defenses. Satellites melted in orbit. Our cities, New York, Beijing, Moscow, Islamabad, Rio, Lagos, were engulfed in flame within minutes. Armies scrambled, governments shouted orders, but none of it mattered. Our weapons, missiles, tanks, aircraft, were nothing compared to theirs. We may as well have been throwing stones at gods. Billions died in the opening assault. The lucky ones, if you could call them that, were taken alive. Alien troop transports descended like vultures, disgorging towering Zerath soldiers clad in armored exoskeletons. Their language was sharp, guttural, but their message was clear: submit or die. And so, humanity was shackled. Those who resisted were slaughtered. Families were torn apart. Men, women, and children were loaded into containment ships like cattle, destined for the slave worlds of the Dominion. Earth itself, our home, was not worth keeping in their eyes. The Zerath left it smoldering, scarred and poisoned, a broken jewel abandoned in the void. But even as the chains closed around our throats, humanity's spirit did not break. I remember the first day I was taken. They bound us in iron collars that burned against our skin. The air inside their transports was choking, filled with the stench of fear. Around me, people wept silently. Some prayed. Others stared into nothing, their minds already gone. But a very few, looked at our captors with eyes that still burned with fire. That fire would spread. The Zerath believed us beaten. They called us primitives, savages, animals that had tasted fire too soon. To them, we were insects to be crushed under the heel of their empire. They paraded us in their cities, forcing us to kneel before crowds of alien citizens who laughed at our weakness. In the slave markets, we were bought and sold like tools, given to mines, factories, and farms spread across 1,000 worlds. But chains are fragile things when placed on the wrong people. In the black mines of Droska 7, where I was sent, the Zerath whipped us into the dust, forcing us to dig their precious ores. We were starved, beaten, and worked until our hands bled. They thought we would break, that we would forget who we were. But every lash of their whips, every drop of blood spilled, only reminded us we were still human, and humans do not kneel forever. I met others there, soldiers who had once fought in Earth defense, engineers who had built machines now rusting in fire, mothers who had lost children, and children who had lost everything. In the dark tunnels of the mines, where the Zerath believed we were too tired to think, we whispered, we remembered, we planned, we learned to watch our captors, how they walked, how their weapons hummed before they fired, how their machines fed on ores we mined. We studied them like they had studied us, patient, silent, waiting for our moment. The Zerath never noticed. They didn't believe primitives could learn. They didn't believe we could adapt. And that arrogance would be their undoing. The first spark came when a young mechanic named Mara Kalin smuggled a broken mining tool into the shadows. She whispered to us that she could turn it into something more, a weapon, crude but deadly. The guards laughed at her defiance. The slaves whispered in fear. But Mara's eyes burned with something no whip could extinguish. We're not slaves, she told us. Not anymore. Not ever again. That night, for the first time since Earth burned, hope returned. We were not yet free. We were still shackled, beaten, and starved. But in the silence of the minds and the fire of our anger, a truth began to grow. Humanity was not finished. We were only waiting. And when the time came, when the first blow was struck, the galaxy would remember the day the primitives broke their chains. The Zerath had forged us in fire and chains, thinking to break us. Instead, they had created their own executioners, weapons of the oppressors. From they called us primitive, we became their executioners. The Zerath Dominion believed chains could silence us. They believed hunger, pain, and fear would strip us of will. But they misunderstood the very core of humanity. We are a species born from struggle. Fire did not come to us as a gift. We tore it from stone and spark. Survival was never guaranteed. It was wrestled from ice, storm, and tooth. And so, when the Zerath sought to break us with whips and collars, they did not realize they were forging us into something far more dangerous than we had ever been before. The rebellion did not begin with armies. It began with whispers. In the choking mines of Droska 7, where I and thousands of others toiled beneath black rock, a girl no older than 20 hid a shard of alien metal in her clothes. Her name was Mara Kalen, and though her hands bled from weeks of digging, her mind never stopped working. She had been an apprentice mechanic once, back on Earth, before the sky turned to fire. She understood machines in ways the Zerath never expected. She showed me the shard one night, in the shadows where the guards did not look. It was a fragment of a plasma drill, cracked and discarded, useless to our masters. But in her hands, it was more than scrap. With this, she whispered, and a little more, I can build something that kills. At first, I thought her mad. What could one broken shard do against an empire that spanned 1,000 systems? But in her eyes burned a fire brighter than the drills that split the stone. And I believed, slowly, piece by piece, tool by tool, we began to take what was theirs. Mining picks were sharpened into blades. Power cells, stolen from broken equipment, became crude bombs. Even the chains around our wrists were reforged into weapons. Every day the Zerath thought we were growing weaker, but in truth, we were preparing. The first strike came on the 47th day of Mara's plan. The guards descended into the shafts, snarling in their guttural tongue, weapons humming with violet light. They ordered us to dig faster, to bleed more for their empire. But this time, we did not bow our heads. When the nearest guard struck a man to the ground, Mara's weapon flared, a stolen power cell wrapped in metal shards, turned into an improvised grenade. The explosion echoed to the tunnels like thunder. The guard never had time to scream. Panic erupted. Chains clattered as slaves rose, wielding blades carved from their own shackles. The Zerath fired their rifles, but the tunnels betrayed them. The narrow walls turned their precision into chaos, their towering frames slowed by the cramped stone. For the first time since Earth burned, blood spilled, but it was not human blood. We killed them. We took their weapons. And with alien rifles in our hands, we were no longer slaves. Word spread like wildfire. Across the slave colonies, humanity's whispers became shouts. On the ice fields of Korra, 9, workers turned harvesting drones into war machines. In the factories of Velf Prime, engineers rewired assembly lines to churn out weapons instead of tools. On Drassel Station, prisoners tore control panels apart and hacked into the Zerath comms, spreading messages of revolt. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The Zerath called us primitive, yet we adapted to their weapons faster than they could imagine. Their rifles became our rifles. Their ships became our ships. Their technology, the very chains meant to bind us, became the blades that would cut their throats. But it was not only humans who rose. Other enslaved species saw what we had done. The insectoid Threx, who had bowed for centuries, rose with us. The scaled ORH Chi, broken across generations, took courage from humanity's defiance. We had lit a spark, and now the fire was spreading across the Dominion. Of course, the Zerath struck back. Their fleets descended on Droska 7, burning the surface from orbit. Their soldiers stormed the tunnels with fire and fury. Thousands of us died. Mara herself was nearly taken. Her arm seared by a plasma shot, her body broken by days of fighting. But she refused to surrender. Even as the Dominion unleashed hell, we fought like demons, vanishing into the tunnels, striking from shadows, dragging their soldiers into darkness one by one. And when their warships landed, expecting easy slaughter, they found their landing bays exploding from within. For we had already infiltrated their ships. We had already learned their systems. And when the engines roared, it was not the Zerath who commanded them, it was us. I will never forget the sight. The first time I stood aboard a stolen Zerath warship, the floor humming beneath my feet, alien controls glowing with strange symbols, I realized we had crossed a line that could never be undone. We were no longer slaves. We were no longer rebels. We had become something far more dangerous, a species with nothing left to lose and the weapons of our masters in our hands. The Zerath laughed at us when they burned Earth. They thought that would be our ending. But in truth, it was our beginning. For now, we had their tools. We had their weapons. And soon, we would turn those weapons back on them. The galaxy had called us primitive. Now, it would learn the cost of its arrogance. The hunt begins. From they called us primitive, we became their executioners. The Zerath Dominion had ruled for 10,000 years. World after world had fallen to their fleets. Species far older than ours had bent the knee, shackled, broken, and forgotten. The Dominion was eternal, or so they believed. But then came humanity. We were never meant to survive. Earth was ash. Our people scattered, enslaved, stripped of everything. Yet in the darkness of the mines, in the shadows of their factories, we had stolen their weapons, seized their ships, and learned their ways. And now it was our turn. The rebellion no longer whispered in shadows. It struck like fire. The first true ambush came in the Helios Rift, a desolate sector filled with shattered asteroids and the broken bones of old wars. A Zerath patrol fleet of 6 warships drifted through, scanning for rebels. Their crews laughed in their guttural tongue, mocking the primitive humans who had dared to steal a handful of ships. They never saw us coming. From the darkness of the asteroids, our stolen frigates emerged, scarred hulls, scavenged weapons, engines patched together with desperation and brilliance. We were outgunned, outnumbered, and outclassed, but we had one advantage the Zerath could never match. We fought like predators. Our ships swarmed them like wolves around a herd. Mara Kalen herself, her arms still scarred from the mines, commanded the first strike. Human gunners unleashed hell. Plasma torpedoes, jury-rigged railguns, missiles we had built from mining charges. The Zerath laughed at our crude weapons, until their lead ship tore apart in an explosion that lit the rift like a newborn star. Panic rippled through their fleet. Their formations crumbled. Their comms crackled with confusion, and we did not give them time to recover. We hacked their NAV systems, sending false signals that led ships into asteroid fields. We jammed their comms, leaving them blind and deaf. And when they fled, thinking to retreat, they found mines waiting in the void. 6 Zerath warships entered the Helios Rift. None returned. The galaxy heard the whispers. For the first time in millennia, the Dominion had lost, not to a rival empire, not to an ancient power, but to the species they had once enslaved. To humanity, the Zerath tried to crush us with overwhelming force. They sent armadas into the void, burning colonies they thought we hid in, but we never met them in open battle. That was their strength. Ours was different. We struck from shadows. We struck where they were weakest. And every blow we dealt carried a message. You are not safe anymore. On Drossel Station, a Dominion shipyard, workers awoke to find their massive dreadnought engulfed in fire. Human saboteurs had crawled through the vents, planted charges, and vanished into the night. On the icy moon of Zerath, Zerath governors awoke to see their guards slaughtered and their palaces burning. A human strike team had infiltrated under cover of a storm, dragging the governor before the slaves he once commanded. His execution was broadcast across the system. Even their generals were not safe. One by one, high-ranking Zerath commanders fell. Some were shot in their chambers. Others found their ships vented to the void. One, the infamous warlord Scar, was found crucified upon the hull of his own flagship, left adrift as a warning. The galaxy watched in shock. For centuries, they had laughed at us. Now, they whispered our name in fear. But it wasn't just us anymore. Other species began to rise. The insectoid Threx swarmed Dominion outposts, wielding weapons we'd given them. The reptilian ORH-Kais stormed fortresses. Their scales armor with stolen Zerath tech. Wherever humanity fought, rebellion followed. And yet, with every victory, the Dominion's wrath grew. They unleashed extermination fleets, burning entire worlds suspected of harboring humans. They slaughtered millions in retaliation, believing fear would break us. But fear no longer ruled us. We had already lost everything. Earth was gone. Families were dead. Our chains had been melted into blades. What more could they take from us? The Zerath did not realize the truth. The moment they enslaved us, they had signed their own death warrant. I remember one night aboard our flagship, the Iron Resolve. Mara stood on the bridge, staring at the stars. Her voice was cold, steady, unyielding. They thought they made us slaves, she said. But all they did was teach us how to kill them. From that day on, the rebellion became something darker. We were no longer fighting for survival. We were no longer fighting to reclaim Earth. Earth was ash. We fought for vengeance. We fought to destroy the Dominion, to tear out its heart and show the galaxy that humanity was not primitive. We were predators. We were hunters. And we would not stop until every last chain was broken and every last Zerath executioner's blade was turned upon his master. The hunt had begun, and humanity would never stop.